Chapter 15. How to Talk Like a First Responder. It's a cold Saturday morning, and we are coming toward the end of our workout, so we are about to practice two 3,000-meter races. I'm sitting in the three-seat of the Australia, our beautiful new quadruple scull, narrow, sleek, and fast racing boat with 4 rowers, each with 2 oars. We are racing against an identical boat. We are evenly matched in strength and skill, and in the first race we finish within half a boat's length of each other. We spin the boats and get ready for the second race. We are the crew of Chaos Rowing. Our ages range from about 30 years on up to me, the elder, in my early 60s. All of us love to row and are always happy to be on the water. But when we're racing, it's all business. There's no such thing as perfect in this sport, but we all strive in that direction. And today, in each boat, it is 4 rowing as one, every action the same. Our objective is to move the boat as far as possible with each stroke in the most efficient manner. The rowing stroke is a constant movement, applying power with the whole body and then recovering. A full stroke begins as we are coiled forward in the sliding seats with knees bent and arms outstretched. We raise our hands slightly, dropping the blade vertically into the water. At the beginning of the drive, all the work is done by the legs as they push back against the foot stretchers, pulling the blades forward and moving the boat in the water. Now our upper bodies begin to uncoil. Then the arms begin their work, pulling the handles toward our chests, drawing the oar blades through the water. By the end of the stroke, we are leaning back about 10 degrees, and the abdominal muscles are fully engaged. Now the drive is over, and we release the pressure on the handle and push it down slightly, releasing the oar from the water. Next, we push our arms forward to full extension. The body follows the hand, and the sliding seat moves forward until the knees are bent and we are ready for the next catch. When we take 30 strokes a minute, we do all that in 2 seconds, over and over and over. Rowing is physically and rhythmically intense in a very precise way. When all the rowers and the boat can row as one, it's a thrilling experience. I still remember a brief 30 seconds of a row 7 months ago in which I was in an all-out peak experience, totally present in this forceful and challenging physical action, and at the same time observing what was going on while simultaneously absolutely exhilarated. 30 seconds isn't very long, but I'll remember those moments forever, and I plan to have many more of them. All our continued work on technique comes down to cross the finish line ahead of all the other boats. The second race begins. We row steady and clean. At about 500 meters, our bowman yells out a new command. Up 2, in 2. Increase the stroke rate per minute by 2 strokes after the next 2 strokes. Then, shouting enough to be heard over the sounds of 2 boats and 16 oars, 1. Another stroke. 2. We're rowing at 26 strokes per minute, and we are focusing our minds and bodies on the efficiency and power needed to propel our boat into the lead. From behind us, we hear Richard's voice again from the bow seat. In 2, power 10. After these 2 strokes, exert all the power you can muster into driving your legs back and the boat forward in these next 10 strokes. 1, 2, give me legs! Rapid, intense power, all as one. I now make an audible huh at the end of each exhale, a sound that shows up on its own as I engage the oar with full exertion. And then, I can't breathe. My force has exceeded my lung capacity, and now I am in a panic state. It's 35 degrees, and both my shirts are zipped up to cover my neck. What was outside of my awareness only moments before is now quite clear. These zippered shirts are also restricting my airway as my muscles are now demanding more oxygen. But there's nothing I can do about that. Each of my hands must remain wrapped around the handle of its own 9.5-foot oar. I'm freaked. We're rowing at a furious intensity, and my inner dialogue is a terse yet mentally loud two-way altercation that sounds like this. I can't go on. I've got to call way enough. That's a command that signals all rowers to immediately stop rowing in mid-stroke. Followed by an opposing voice. Keep going. Keep going. But at this moment, I'm afraid that if I continue rowing, well, I don't quite know what will happen, but it will be something like I will black out and just fall forward in my seat. I'm screaming in my head, "Now! Say it now! Way enough now! Before it's too late!" But, geez, I really don't want to do that. No one has ever, in any boat I've been in or around, called way enough because they couldn't catch their breath. I don't want to be the first. I'd be so embarrassed. More important, I don't want to disappoint my fellow rowers. We have committed ourselves as a boat to win this race. Our job is to win this race, just like the 4 in the other boat are committed to winning. We row as though this is the biggest race of our lives. That's just how you do it. One does not stop a boat mid-race because of some discomfort. I don't want to be the one that spoils this, but I might have to be. One voice. Keep going. Keep going. The other voice. I've got to stop. I've got to stop now. I can't do this. I'm in trouble. I can't breathe. I can't go on. I hear the bowman call out, 30 more strokes. I'm phoning it in now. I give 0 power to my legs because any more exertion will put me further into an anaerobic state. I'm contributing nothing to our effort now except doing my best to maintain proper form. I'm solely trying to move my legs, my back, and my arms in sync with the other 3 in the boat. 20 more strokes, the bowman calls. I can't go on. I can't breathe. I have to stop. Keep going. 10 more strokes. I'm silently counting each stroke, talking to myself. I can take 9 more strokes. 8 more strokes. It's 5 more seconds. I can get there. We just edge out the other boat as the race ends. Now we shift to paddle mode, slowing the stroke rate and taking the pressure off our legs. Now that it's over, I'm happy that my executive voice won the day, because I did get through it, and I didn't let down the others in my boat. I didn't have to sheepishly admit that I'm not as aerobically fit as I would like to be. Here's the irony. Despite my sense that I was losing control, our boat set the club record for the fastest 3,000-meter row. Then another boat broke our record the next morning. What fun. This story illustrates what any of us go through when we're really afraid. We are totally alert to our present experience and simultaneously predicting a dreadful future. I had struggled because moment by moment I wasn't sure if I could make it. I wasn't even sure that promoting the keep going message was the smart decision. If I had passed out, it would have been the wrong decision. Yes, I was part of a competition, but the biggest competition was the battle inside my mind. As I'm sure you already know, negative self-talk can paralyze any of us. That's what you and I need to work on, how to win those internal battles. Talking yourself into action. Let's take a step back and study this territory of self-talk. It will be one of our strongest assets, so we need to know how best to take advantage of it. We tend to talk to ourselves throughout the day, 96% of adults report some kind of inner dialogue. Really? You thought you were the only one? 1/4 of all our waking hours include some form of self-talk. Perhaps we are not all masters of mindfulness, but neither do we move through the day mindlessly. Setting the alarm clock, packing the gym bag, designing new marketing materials, caretaking a toddler. Most of our calls to action are directed by a message that is at least one level higher in abstraction. Seize the day. If I stay in shape, I'll remain healthier. Our numbers are slumping and I need to take some action. Better childproof this room. Some people approach everyday life with a mantra that is a manifestation of their larger frame of reference. Even if a simple phrase can dictate how you respond in any given moment or situation. For some, let go and let God, from 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you, is a conviction that they can relate to and obey. For others, the golden rule is the message they carry with them always. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Outside of the biblical passages, some will adopt John F. Kennedy's exhortation, "Ask not what your country can do for you," urging the common man to act, to participate, and to instigate the change they seek. What about William Shakespeare's "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players"? The best advice the bard has ever given us might be this reminder not to take oneself and the world around us too seriously. We have pre-programmed built-in messages for almost all our activities, whether routine or significant. If you're heading to an important job interview, you've probably formed a mental list of simple instructions. Don't be late. Be polite. Shake hands. Maintain eye contact. Enunciate. These commands help you move toward the desired goal, which is, I'm going to get this job. Positive self-talk has long been studied in sports performance. Athletes don't just engage in superstitious rituals moments before they perform. They motivate themselves. I can do this. Give it your all. And during the action, they give themselves specific instructions to maintain their focus, see the target, or execute proper technique, follow through. Researchers have shown that both motivational and instructional self-talk can enhance performance and improve outcome, and both types work best for beginners. And this is why when you watch shows like The Biggest Loser, if you're a fan of reality television, you'll hear the trainers repeatedly ask the contestants what they hope to get out of this journey and why they've decided to put themselves through this torture. Mid-lunge or mid-push-up, the contestant will grunt, "I'm doing it for my family," or "I'm doing it because I want to be happy." The trainers ask these questions in moments of stress because that outcome picture provides motivation when we need it most. In an episode of Extreme Makeover, Weight Loss Edition, in which super obese individuals are selected for a year-long transformation, Chris Powell offered his insight while training a 355-pound woman who had lost her sense of direction and self-worth. It's in these pivotal moments when she's terrified. That's when fight or flight happens. That's when I get to see what she's got. It's in these moments you can see if she wants to run, or I can challenge her to fight. I need to build her self-confidence. I need to build her self-worth. And she needs to know that she can fight. Fighting is what makes you strong, and fighting is what you need to do for the rest of your life. That's how we survive. We've been using self-talk in treatment for all kinds of health and mental health problems. Pain patients, students with emotional disorders, even children with anxiety or depression. Ever since famed psychologist Don Meichenbaum in 1977 began studying his treatment approach for behavior changeback. So it's safe to say we can apply it to your tasks. Run hills hard. My brother Phil was a track star in high school. Then in college, he continued his achievements, running both cross-country and track all 4 years for Duke University. One of his relay races set a conference record that stood for 29 years, which, in case you don't know, is an extraordinary feat. As I mentioned in Chapter 9, I was at the University of North Carolina, 2 years behind him and just 8 miles down the road. Don't get me started on our basketball rivalry. As I began to take up running for exercise, Phil taught me the tactics for efficiently running up a hill, the same tactics taught by his coach, Al Bueller, one of the greatest college track and cross-country coaches in the history of the sport. Coach Bueller's job was first to explain the physics involved in using efficiency and power to quickly ascend a hill. There were 4 principles of action. Get the body forward by dropping your head and raising your arms. Apply energy to the task. Push forward and up. Generate faster turnover of your legs. Yes, this task of quickly and efficiently running up hills is based on the principles of physics and physiology. Yet, when you're in a race, you have no time to think through any broad principles. Each of these college athletes needed to translate those principles into a simple set of moment-by-moment instructions that directed their actions. For Phil, they became these self-instructions. Raise the arms. Swing the arms. Look 5 to 6 feet ahead. Shorten the stride. Pick up the tempo. I have shared this story in probably 40 workshops over the years. I stop at this point in the story and ask the audience of mental health professionals the following question, and I ask it of you now. As he's running up the hill in cross-country meet, why would my brother tell himself, look 5 to 6 feet ahead? What's your guess? Take a moment to think about it. I'll wait. The most common responses I receive are, he wants to make sure he doesn't stumble over any rocks, and he wants to keep his eyes from looking up to the top of the hill because that would be intimidating. That gives me the opportunity to say, these are all good common sense answers, but no, they're not quite right. Let me say again, as you face a difficult task, all self-instructions should extend from your strategy, and that strategy will be a set of principles. Look back at the 4 principles Coach Bueller presented. What part of the strategy was Phil applying through the message, look 5 to 6 feet ahead? I assume the answer will now become quite clear. The first task in the strategy is to get the body forward by dropping your head and raising your arms. By looking 5 to 6 feet in front of him, Phil gets his head down and, based on physics, gravity now will work in his favor instead of against him. I'm not suggesting that you talk supportively to yourself when you have a difficult task, although that's a nice idea. I'm telling you to start with a master plan. Develop a point of view that will enable you to generate your strategy. Then translate that strategy into simple, brief directives you can deliver within self-talk. Speaking of a master plan, focus, focus, focus. Since 1988, Freeman Hrabowski, now president of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC, has helped turn a little-known commuter school on the outskirts of Baltimore into a mid-size state university with a reputation as one of the most innovative schools in the country, graduating outstanding scientists, engineers, and mathematicians, many of whom are minorities. 41% of the bachelor's degrees earned in 2010 were in those fields, well above the national average of 25%. Students at UMBC follow a demanding schedule and strict rules designed to instill a sense of discipline and build community. In 2011, 60 Minutes profiled the accomplishments of Hrabowski and his students. At the close of the segment, he was shown giving a talk to one of the classes in the school. He finishes by saying, "Nothing takes the place of hard work, attitude, and getting support from each other. And that's what this is all about. Focus, focus, focus." Give yourselves a hand. Keep working hard. Now that sounds quite motivational, but you're missing the visuals. Each time Hrabowski repeats the word focus, he speaks quite deliberately as though he is reminding them of an important instruction. He holds his hands on either side of his face and then brings them forward and back about 10 inches each time he repeats that word. 3 times he says focus, and 3 times he moves his hands in that fashion. And every single college student in that classroom repeats that message simultaneously with him, like a Greek chorus, with those same gestures. What does that mean? All students at the university are trained to express that message and to use that message to help keep themselves on track. They have a master plan. Repeating those words is a cue to institute their master plan. When they get distracted at the library from 2 students whispering behind them, they can repeat that mantra to help pull their attention back to their studies. When they're taking an exam and begin to worry that they don't know the subject matter well enough, they can repeat that mantra to help them focus back on the next question. What's going on here? Detachment and absorption. Focus, focus, focus becomes a cue to detach themselves from what they're currently attending to and absorb themselves back on their desired tasks. If they're responding to its intention, these students don't start thinking, I wonder if I really should continue to play Angry Birds. In other words, they don't analyze the decision to refocus their attention. They operate on automatic pilot. When they hear that focus message, they let it be their cue to stop, turn away, and begin to absorb themselves in their studies. A skill like this will be of great benefit to you. Anxiety will distract you with doubts and worries and insecurities. You need to turn away from those distractions and refocus your attention back to the task at hand, whatever it may be. But lest you think that the idea behind focus, focus, focus is the domain of a single university, let me set the record straight. You may not know this, but if you were to ever spend any time working with a personal trainer at the gym, he or she is well aware that your emotions and even your body will tell you to stop working out. The voice in your head will convey that you will feel better if you will just stop. One of the ways your trainer will combat that message is to help you focus on the numbers, counting down the number of repetitions left in any particular exercise. Detachment and absorption. Your spin class instructor knows it's easy for you to get winded in any class and then begin to lose your form or slow your pace. The best instructors will shift your focus of attention. For instance, Tommy Wohlfeld at Crunch Fitness LA continually reminds those in his class to focus on the 3 components that are within their control: form, pace, and resistance. Every time he teaches a class, he will repeat this message. Focus on keeping your body in the proper position. Focus on keeping the pace that is set at the start of each jog or hill or run. Focus on upping the resistance to a level that is challenging to you. Proper form makes for a better ride. Keeping your chest up and your neck aligned, for instance, allow you to have better breath control. So you have to trust the form despite your fatigue. Tommy teaches this technique because he knows that when riders become fatigued, their tendency is to put their entire bodies into pushing those pedals. They bend over toward the handlebars, collapse their necks down, and sway heavily from side to side with each pedal push. Imagine you are one of Tommy's regular students. Now you're at the gym, working out by yourself on a stationary bike. How do you reduce the likelihood of falling into these bad habits? What if you periodically called up those ready-made instructions from Tommy? You could then cue yourself with any one of 3 simple mantras like maintain form, pick up the pace, and up the resistance. While you're spinning, from time to time you're certainly going to space out or get caught up in one of the songs you're listening to, and then start bending over the handlebar and unknowingly slowing your pace. Of course. But if you train yourself to keep returning to sub-vocalizing one of those mantras, and if you use it as a cue to absorb yourself in the mechanics of proper spinning technique, you can get yourself back to good form and pace. To break a board in the martial art of Taekwondo, you need to kick or punch through the board. So the sensei will instruct you to aim for a spot that is past the board. You can't stop or slow down when you hit the board. To override your fear, I can't break a piece of wood, the sensei will tell beginning students to focus on accuracy, focus on proper technique, and correct positioning of the foot, and focus on the spot beyond the board. If you are receptive to your sensei's message, when you hear yourself get distracted by "I can't do this," you will use that as a cue to refocus your attention on accuracy, technique, stance, and that spot beyond the board. How do you refocus? By telling yourself to, and by responding to your own request. When first learning to play guitar, you need to play through the pain. Moreover, a student with delicate fingers may have to develop calluses to be able to tolerate playing. Therefore, you need to practice every day, working through the pain, and focus on the steps presented to you by your teacher, e.g., learning the chords, strumming, the pressure of the strum, and the rhythm, etc. You put your focus on a number of places. Are my fingers on the right strings? Is my thumb in the proper place? Is my wrist relaxed? Arm muscles loose? Shoulders down? Am I holding the pick properly? Do I have a proper stance? So when you hear yourself saying, "I can't do this, it hurts too much," cue yourself to detach your focus from, "This is too hard." Then move your attention over to your skills. A wonderful example of changing your focus is the way swimming instructors teach children how to dive. The brain perceives water as a solid object. That's why children pick up their head just prior to diving. They don't want their heads to hit the hard surface, so they end up smacking the chest or belly on the water's surface, and that hurts. Therefore, young diving students face a predicament. The only way they will learn to perform the dive correctly is to override their urge to protect themselves. Chris Berger, the men's and women's diving coach at Yale University, says, "Children have a conditioned reflex to pick their heads up and put their hands out when they feel like they're falling. As children start walking, they learn that if they don't keep their head up and their hands out, they get hurt." Berger suggests that instructors talk through the process of diving when a child is nowhere near the pool. Explain to your children that water is soft and that they should never lift their chin up. But children are no different from adults. They need something else to focus on so they don't revert back to unhelpful behavior. So the diving instructor trains them to focus on the physicality rather than the fear of falling. They will repeat these messages again and again, and they want the child to take them on as messages to self. Chin tucked, hands flat, one on top of the other, and so forth. They will take the actions in stages, beginning with a sitting dive, advancing to a kneeling dive, and eventually to a standing dive, all the while repeating those directives. And all the while the children are building their working memory to master diving for their lifetime. Talking from above. So let's review. We all talk to ourselves, and we do it all day long. If you are awake 16 hours a day, you will accumulate about 4 hours worth of self-talk spread out over the whole day. That's 4 hours of commenting to yourself about your experience. Now, you've read numerous examples of using this self-talk as an essential skill in learning anything new. I've told you about training to efficiently race up a hill, Freeman Hrabowski's focus, focus, focus to help students concentrate, the personal trainers and the spin class instructors at the gym, the sensei who teaches students where to focus their attention, and how one learns to play guitar or dive into a pool. If you want to enhance your performance and improve your outcome, why not act like so many successful performers do? What we say to ourselves will either compound our problems or be part of the solution to our problems. You and I would be quite foolish indeed if we built a self-help program while ignoring self-talk. So we will return to this topic in Chapter 23, where we'll work together to generate specific moment-by-moment messages for you. If you can commit to the task, and if you can practice over time, then after a while, things will start to come together. Let me explain. My brother had a third phase of skill development as he learned to run those hills. The first two were to comprehend the strategy his coach taught him and then to translate it into moment-by-moment self-instructions. After the first couple of months as a freshman cross-country runner, he no longer needed to sub-vocalize his 5 messages: raise and swing the arms, look 5 to 6 feet ahead, shorten the stride, pick up the tempo. They became part of his muscle memory as long as he cued himself. He just needed one big message to help him apply his strategy, and he picked run hills hard. As he saw a steep incline coming during a workout or race, all he had to sub-vocalize was run hills hard, and he then routinely engaged in his efficient actions. When you think about it, in just about every common task we can give ourselves a simple message that is a cue for a more complex process. Proof the paper before you turn it in can generate a sophisticated set of grammatical corrections. Be polite here will engage a different variety of actions depending on whether a police officer has just pulled you over, you are having your first dinner with your future in-laws, or you are asking for a refund past the 30-day guarantee. Our work here will be similar. Once you've given yourself specific instructions a number of times, you'll develop some shorthand message that will represent the action you need to take. After working on the skills in this book, perhaps one day you will be standing in front of a task that seems daunting to you. You hesitate. It seems like a pretty risky action. If you said, "Whatever it takes, I'm going to finish this," that message doesn't instruct you on your task. It encourages you to push through resistance and continue on. Or you could even say to yourself, "I want my life back," as a cue to step forward into the struggle. That message doesn't tell you what to do. There's no explicit instruction. You will use it as a reminder, since you will already know the basics of what to do in these situations. As you're sitting in your car, about to merge onto the highway to do a driving practice, I suppose you could go into a long, sub-vocalized monologue like, "My fear of the highway makes me have to drive on all the back roads to bring the kids to school and pick them up every day. I can't even visit my mom because then I would have to get on the interstate, and I can't do that yet. I feel embarrassed and inadequate. Getting on the highway right now feels oh so very scary, but I understand that, hard as it is, I have to practice this in order to get stronger. I'm going to have to tolerate feeling awkward, clumsy, insecure, and scared before I'm going to get stronger. And this is the practice I've designed for myself today. I need to get on this highway. I'm going to get on this highway." But that sure is a lot of talking, and the time for action is now. It's possible you could allow the message, "I want my life back," to represent that entire communication, and then let it motivate you to merge onto the highway. Otherwise, of course, it's not going to be much help. First responder. You can't let yourself be the only intimidated one anymore. You need to consider yourself as both the one who is feeling threatened and as the first responder. You have to find a way to take care of yourself when you're scared, just as a first responder is trained to care for those at the scene of an emergency. But you also need to move into action if you want to reach your goals. When you get caught up in your obsessiveness or your panicky worry, that's your cue to step back mentally, just like we've been talking about in the previous chapters, and then to talk to yourself in a simple way that helps you manage the scene and move towards your positive goals. You need to elevate that voice of the first responder above your panicky worry. Arguing with yourself isn't going to help you. You can't allow these two sides of you, these two voices in you, to stand on equal footing. If you do that, you will end up standing still. Your first responder voice needs to be the executive voice, in charge. You also can't just give yourself a message. In the midst of feeling intimidated, your more insecure side will then need to act on the instructions, despite all the uncomfortable doubts that are sounding off. You need to persuade your scared self to step forward anyway. When you tell yourself, "Go ahead and step forward," your whole body and mind need to be ready to take that action. Mouthing the words will do you no good. Repeating a message you heard in this chapter won't help. You have to buy into the protocol represented by the message. And whatever you say to yourself should get you to act, not to sit still and keep thinking. Do you remember Mary, who had been struggling with panic attacks and claustrophobia? In our second session, I described how she might use a strong executive voice to help her when she's feeling the urge to escape. Here's the rest of that conversation. Mary: I'm not the type of personality that responds really well to strong commands. Reed: Okay. Well, is there a way to modify what I'm saying that might be more helpful to you in those moments? Mary: I'd probably say, "You're stronger than that. You're stronger than that. Just stay." It's a different tone of voice, I guess. Reed: Okay, that seems fine. Here's another way to think of it. Imagine one of your kids in high school is in the pool, and all of a sudden, in the relatively shallow water, he starts flailing, and he looks like he's going under at any moment. You're going to reach out and ask him to grab your hand. But he's still flailing. What would you yell at him at that moment? Your hand is within reach, but he's flailing to grab it. What would you say to him, and how would you say it? Mary: I would say, "Stop. Here it is. Right? Here's my hand. Calm down." Reed: Okay. Reach out, find my hand, right? So that's what we're talking about here. Mary: Okay. Reed: It doesn't have to be angry. It just needs to be firm. Mary: Okay. Firm is better. Mary needs to find her own voice that will work effectively in those moments. But I did want to influence her choice, because most of the time the first responder voice needs to speak briefly, simply, and firmly. When you're flailing, you might very well need to hear that instruction in the form of a command. When I set the scene of her student struggling to stay above water, Mary didn't speak gently and quietly. She spontaneously used a first responder voice, which was stronger and louder. But listen carefully to this. That was a compassionate gesture on Mary's part. She wanted to take care of the student, and she did it by using a commanding voice. When a part of you is flailing and scared and confused, to give yourself at that moment a clear, strong directive is a caring gesture. Find the voice inside you who wants to take care of you during times when you are acting courageously. Speaking of Mary, we left off at the end of the first session. She decided to practice some of the skills we talked about by driving through a parking garage that evening. Keep in mind that she's been too intimidated even to enter most parking garages the previous several years. Let's see how she did.